I always want to make this channel and this content as much about you, your golf and your needs as possible. So I ran a poll yesterday on YouTube asking what you'd like to see a video on. You can see the results on the screen. So 39% of you want to see a video on how to shift in the downswing. Now, there's actually still a few hours left to run on that, but I think that's going to be the winner. So this is really important because if you can learn how to shift correctly into your lead side and get that lateral component that so many golfers lack, you're going to start to really elevate your strike. And when you elevate your strike, you play better, but the game just becomes far more fun and enjoyable. So we're going to start off by looking at two of my favorite drills that are really simple to do, that are going to help with your irons. We're going to take a quick look at driver, and then we're going to finish by looking at some of the world's best golfers and showing you exactly what they do so you can build that really clear picture in your mind. So there are a couple of different elements of the downswing that we have to have. There's some rotation that needs to be in there, there's some vertical, but we're specifically looking at the lateral. So what do we mean by that? Well, if I took a setup here, I've got a 7-iron, and if you look at where my hips are here at setup, I like my weight to be pretty much balanced. I maybe like a slight bit more on that lead leg, so maybe 55%, 45%. But when we get to impact, just look at where I'd like my legs to be. A lot more forwards over this way. There's some lateral movement towards the target. Now, why is that important? Well, you know, think about that strike that we know that we're looking for. Ball, turf, downward attack angle, hitting the golf ball, then going into the ground. That gives us that compression, gives us that quality of strike, makes it more consistent. We can only really do that if we've got that lateral component in there. So if you're someone who doesn't take a divot, if you thin it, you fat it, you struggle with strike, there's a very good chance that at impact, you don't have any of that lateral. And in some cases, the hips are even back of where they started. That's really going to be quite problematic. So I'm going to give you two drills that are really going to help you get that shift into your lead side. The first one, you're going to be needing a couple of little props. You don't have to use these, but if you've got them, it's ideal. This is a tennis ball that I've just cut in half, and this is an alignment stick. So many of you will have an alignment stick. If you grab yourself a tennis ball and cut it in half, then that's going to be really, really helpful. I'm going to pop this alignment stick through my belt, and it's going to go pretty short on this side and pretty long on this side. And I'm going to take my setup and I'm going to put this sort of tennis ball on the ground here. So the first thing would be the lateral shift starts before the club even finishes moving away from the target. There's this transition in a golf swing where the hips start moving towards the target. If you think about the golf swing as a backswing and a downswing, really easy to get stuck on that leg. There is a backswing move, there is a transition where the two blend, and then you've got your downswing move. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a setup, and I want you to put your sort of lead foot onto this tennis ball. And the key thing would be, as you're getting towards the completion of your backswing, you're going to feel like you put more pressure through that tennis ball, and this side of the alignment stick stays lower than this side. So as I sort of remove the club and make my backswing, you can see how I've created this angle through the alignment stick. That's really important. Lead side is lower. So many golfers, as they start down, if they try to add that lateral in, they raise that lead side too much. And what that does, it actually forces you back onto your back leg. What great players do is they get to here, as they start in the transition, they put pressure through that tennis ball, but notice how the lead side of that alignment stick is staying lower than the trail side. And you can see that lateral element that's through my thighs, that's through my hips, and that's me shifting pressure, shifting weight onto that lead side. So I'll show you that again, into that lead side, pressure on the tennis ball, lead side, I should say, stays lower. Now the great thing about that little exercise, you can do that anywhere. I'd almost encourage you to start at home in front of a reflection or in front of a mirror, get that club across your shoulders and just practice that movement so you can feel it and you can see it. So you can start to see exactly the movements you're making. And if you watch any golf, you can start to see where that looks like the movement that the great players do. So a couple of things that you might find happen fairly naturally. You might feel like from here, the first move you want to make is a rotation spin. That's going to be quite problematic. It's probably going to cause you to come over the top and swipe across it. Or some of you might find that that first movement is that sort of bump this way where the lead side goes too high. Those are probably the two most common faults when it comes to that lateral shift. So let's just go ahead and practice this first move, putting pressure through the tennis ball, keeping the lead side a little lower. And then we'll come on to the second drill in a moment, but there's no reason why you can't go ahead and hit some shots you know, with that little reference under your lead side, it just gives you something to sort of be aware and think about through your swing. And that one was really solid. Ball, then the ground, felt like compression. That's the strike that I'm after. So that's the first drill. Let's put our tennis ball away. Second drill, sun cream. You don't actually need sun cream. Anything like this would work. A bottle, obviously a bottle of sun cream would absolutely work. And this is really good because this is going to give us a reference for what we're trying to do. I absolutely love this drill because it's a little bit more of what I call a task drill. I'm going to set a task, and if you can achieve that task, kind of suggests that you're doing the right thing. So we're going to take my setup, again, 7-iron, and this bottle of sun cream is going to go just outside my trail heel. Now we know that there's some rotation in the downswing. The hips are going to rotate. If there's rotation, but no lateral, what happens is the heel on my back foot tends to spin. And when it spins, it knocks the object over. But just watch what happens if I have my lateral shift and then I add my rotation. Well, then I end up in a position like this where I'm facing the target. I've got that lateral, I've got that rotation, but the bottle stayed in place. So the great thing with this little exercise is you can just go ahead and hit shots, see where the bottle stays in place. If it moves, if it gets knocked over, that's your little golf coach saying, hey, you need to shift a little bit more forwards. And this is great because it just allows you to get instant feedback every time you make a golf swing. Ultimately, if you can hit shots where you finish on your left side, you're facing the target and the bottle has stayed in place, then that's going to be your indication that you've made the right move. So, with any luck, I'm going to do exactly what I've said here. Bottle's in place, and again, strike. Felt really, really solid. Ball, turf contact, you can see where the tee was, you can see where the divots were. I've hit down that golf ball, and that's exactly what you need to do. So how is it different with the driver, and is it different with the driver? Well, you absolutely do want some lateral shift for the driver, but it's not as essential. You know, what are we looking to do with the driver? Are we looking to hit ball, turf, and downwards? Well, of course not. Lots of golfers do have that same pattern, and it's robbing you of distance if you do that. What we're actually looking to do is hit a little bit more up on the golf ball. Now, we're going to come to a couple of examples later in the video. You'll see some world-class golfers and how they do it. But with the driver, I don't want you to be as much across your lead side. I like to see a little bit of shift into that lead side to get that pressure building, but I like that to turn into rotational speed a little bit earlier. So you are going to see that lateral shift, which means that the same exercises and drills that we've done will work, but you're maybe not looking to go quite as much. That extreme movement where we shift into our lead side is great to get that compression, that strike. But when you're looking to launch the driver into the air, hit up on it, maximize your distance, your launch angle, reduce the spin, we maybe don't need quite as much of that. So I'm going to be hitting this drive now. I need to go a little further left, and I'm still looking to shift, but just not quite as much. And we'll show you the differences in my swing after this drive. Obviously no divot. I don't want a divot. So we're going to show you my two swings on the screen, iron and driver, and just look at kind of hip starting point, where it goes. There is lateral there in both swings, but a little bit more with the iron, and that's really key. So let's dive into a couple of real elite golfers. Let's look at their swings and what they do so you can get a real good visual.
And once he gets here, we're now just going to put a line to reference his belt buckle, just so we can see what that does in transition. And then as he goes from backswing to downswing, just look at the movement that he makes. It's forwards towards the target, but it's always also, I should say, downwards into the ground. He's moving in this direction here, and he continues to move, and he gets significantly into his lead side. So just look at his belt buckle. It's gone down, it's gone forwards, and that's exactly what we've been talking about in this video. And then we go to impact, and then he just pivots around that point. What does he do in transition? Same movement. Now, he doesn't have quite as much of the downward that Tommy does, but you can see just how much lateral he's got. His left thigh's hit that vertical line. He's got into his left side, and it was pretty early. Look, lead arm level the ground. He's already shifted almost across to that lead line. That's taken through to impact. And again, there you can see belt buckle has gone down by some amount. Right, let's bring in Rory. Forwards and down. You can see that sort of lowering movement. If you look on the left-hand side, you can see his head lowering. He's moving into his lead side, but also putting some huge pressure through that left foot. And again, by the time he gets lead arm level the ground, he's already into that lead side. huge lateral shift. And if you take it to impact, it starts to push up, out and away. And I will just finish up with one driver swing. Here's Rory, there's our reference points. And again, what we're going to see is there's that lateral. But look at what I said in the video, he doesn't go quite as much across to that furthest line, that vertical line. So with the driver, is the movement the same? Well, yes, in theory it's the same. We move forward, we move down, we just generally don't go quite as far. So when he gets toward delivery, look at his lead leg, it's not vertical, it's sort of angled a little bit back, and that helps him sort of launch the driver into the air. So if you are not shifting, then you are holding yourself back. You've got to get into that lead side, you've got to do it early. It happens with driver, it happens with irons. It's going to help your golf game.